surfnvs.com is where you go for NVS fins.
Yes, Naked Vikings fins, NVS fins. I pulled out of my shed an old Twinser I hadn't really ridden, and I found my new Stu Kenson NVS Twinser fins, the big twin fins and the small little Twinser canards, and threw them in there yesterday and went for a surf, and all good. Just so glad to have those fins as that whole fin drawer filled with NVS fins as a resource for me, and good stuff.
So the year of the Twinser continues into 2025. I was expecting a stop at the end of 2024.
I mean, I've been riding those Twinsers for 20 years, so
It had
I'm
a
a
banner
fan.
year in 2024 though.
They really did. They really
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. Well, NVS will keep you in business whether you need a single fin, twin. I rode a set of twins from NVS yesterday. Thrusters, quads, whatever you need. Collaborations with a who's who of surfboard manufacturers. And then also, if you are making surfboards and you need fins, they can do small runs of fins if you need something custom. So check them out at surfnvs.com. And then our other great friends are at Real Watersports. They are an incredible retail store. They're located in North Carolina, which we don't mention very often, but it's almost not worth mentioning because they can ship you anything anywhere in the planet. And it's just having a full scale retail store at your fingertips, basically, through realwatersports.com.
Yeah, and I'm going to be taking a trip out to the East Coast here next week, so I'm hoping to run into Trip and see them. And they're like family. They're big fans of ours, and we're big fans of theirs. And Real Water Sports, one stop shop.
Yeah, they also do camps, lessons for foiling, surfing, kiting, anything. And then they have a essentially hotel right next door. It's called the Waterman's Retreat, and it's condos. And Scott and I stayed there last year or the year before. And so it's full service retail, everything at realwatersports.com.
As we see some movement at the takeoff zone, it's Kelly Slater.
Yeah, Guy, excuse me. Yeah, Guy, David Lee Scales, Scott Bass talking all things surf on the Spit podcast. It is the first show, David, of 2025. It's January 2nd. Do we know how many years you and I have been doing this? I know you have a pretty good idea of when we started.
I believe it was September 2013.
Oh, okay. So I guess that makes it 12 years or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, let
Not
me
quite 12.
yeah, not quite
Well,
12, but more than a decade. How's that?
okay. More than a decade. That's a
I'll
long
pull
time.
I'm pulling up the exact date. Hold for 1 second. September 1st, 2013 was our first show.
Wow. Okay. Well, um, here we are. And luckily, there's still plenty to talk about in the surfing world because surfing is fun. That's why, or it should be anyway. Sometimes it's not. But how was your surfing experience yesterday in the middle of winter here, cold, beginnings of winter here in 2025?
I had a
Cold,
little
your first surf of the year.
I had a little bit of an epiphany yesterday, or just a resetting. As happens with the new year, you reflect on the old. I'm
Mhm.
not one for resolutions really,
Yeah.
and I feel like it just feels phony to me. Like if I need to change something in my life, there's no point in waiting until the first of the year to do it. I should just
Yeah.
change and make a change throughout the course of the year. But it is a good time to reflect, and I think it is good to have periods or times in life where you take an inventory essentially. And so I don't know if I was just in that mood because of New Year's, but man, yesterday with surfing, I didn't have the best session of my life, or waves weren't stellar. It was like close to shore, easy to surf. A lot of that big swell has kind of gone away, but super fun, kind of all that you want in terms of fun. And I was like, you know what? This feels so good. This is like everything that I have in my life, I've gotten from surfing. I hate to sound cliche, but like my worldview, my fitness, my humility, like my confidence. I come out of the water, I'm in a great mood. I feel good, and I kind of can conquer the rest of my day, all because of that. And when I don't surf, I feel the opposite of those things. I just feel less fit. I feel less confident. I feel, less, I don't know, clear in the things that I want. So it's therapeutic, which is also a cliche, but I don't know where I would be without it, essentially. I felt a lot of gratitude for having surfing in my life from the age of 12, basically, because I don't know where I'd be without it.
Wow. Well, I really liked the word humility that you threw in there because I certainly need to continue to sort of adopt and adapt with humility, which has an interesting definition, but in my take, it's about remaining teachable and not being certain, you know? Somebody once told me that the word certainty, like if you dig down into that word, it's an ancient, like, and again, I'm kind of butchering this. I'll raise my hand here and say, look, I could be wrong. And if I am, please correct me. But I think it's an ancient Sanskrit word. The definition of the ancient Sanskrit word is to be in sin. Once
Really?
you're certain you are in sin. And I found that fascinating, like probably the best thing that I can do going into 2025 is raise my hand and go, you know what? Maybe I don't know. Maybe I can learn here. Maybe I can be in a teachable state. And I think if I move through the year like that, I'll probably be in a pretty good space.
Well, I totally understand the origin of that word. That makes a lot of sense. I could see the connection to once you're certain, there's a certain amount of pride that comes with that. Like, oh, I just know, and you're not in a learning position anymore. So I like that as well. The humility that I was referring to, I may not maintain throughout all of my life. I'm probably fighting against it at sometimes, but the humility is related to the ocean always beats you. You know what I mean? Like no matter how um, competent you are at surfing, the ocean is always going to win. And so that's where the humility comes in. There's no besting the ocean. So you're always in that position of trying to learn, trying to get better. So,
Huh. I like it. I like it.
yeah. How was your surf experience yesterday?
It's been kind of just not so good, mostly because of the cold, believe it or not. Believe it or not, that's my main thing is my feet just get so friggin' cold. I don't have good circulation. And so there's some really great booties in the marketplace, but none of them work for me.
Yeah.
And it's not their fault. It's my own because of this. So I just get these cold white stumps of feet and I just can't surf. And no matter how much stretching I do, um, I just get stiff pretty quick. I'm getting old, David. I'm an old
I
man.
hear you. See,
So it's tough in the cold.
it's interesting. I was attributing the cold water as my that's the reason for my epiphany yesterday. Is the
Oh.
cold water makes me feel re-energized in a way that warm water doesn't.
Well, for me, surfing really is about like this, the body movement's very fluid. And I'll just say again that I've said before, surfing is a dance in some ways, and it's an expression of yourself. And, I think of like, what would Brad Gerlach be saying, about the cold and about being stiff? It's really hard to do the positioning that's required when I'm stumbling to my feet with my booty. And
Yeah.
by the time I get my shit together, the energy of the waves past, riding a shortboard, you kind of got to be pretty much on top of your game right away. You can get away with, if you're on a longboard, you can kind of stumble around and the projection of the rail is going to allow you to finally catch up and get your feet connected right. And then you can kind of go. But on a shortboard, for me, if I miss like the first one or two beats of the wave, the rest of the rhythm of the wave's gone. I'm completely out of my element and what I'm supposed to be doing from a rhythmic standpoint. And so, yeah, I'm struggling with the cold and
But were you wearing a 4-3?
yes.
That's the other thing. That 1 millimeter of extra rubber makes it stiffer.
Yeah, I mean there's a lot going on, of course, and I've got a little hood thing on because
Yeah.
and I found as you're absolutely right, by the way. I used to when I was younger, I would full suit, super warm booty. I would wear gloves on certain days in the winter and just be fully encased and I could pull it off.
Yeah.
But as I get older, I'm like, I need less of this stuff. I can't
Yeah.
do this. I need to get rid, like it's inhibiting. And, but now
The
I sound like I'm whining, which I guess I am.
the 4.3 for me is the max that I can wear. Like I'm still mobile in it, but I notice the difference for sure. And when I see guys in Jersey or wherever else with like, 5 mil with a hood and boots and everything, and then they're doing an air reverse, I'm like, how in the world are you pulling that off?
And I'm blown away by the old guys like the Peter Mells and the Ross Clark Joneses of the world and anybody over basically, I don't know, let's say 50 that is surfing 60-foot waves with a 5 mil full suit on. That's just mind boggling to me.
It totally is. Yeah, they're a different breed for sure.
Yeah.
Well, good man. Happy New Year.
Well, look, I have some New Year's predictions. I want to go through these with you. I imagine you might have some too.
I do. I've kind of categorized mine. I've got three bold predictions that I would like to make, but then I also have some kind of general themes that I've seen emerge and world tour. I think we can go through some of the rookies on tour and make some predictions there as
Oh,
well.
oh, okay, good. Well, I just have three. And then of course the Stab magazine put out their Surfer of the Year announcement. And so that might be something that we can kind of comment on as well.
Perfect.
Oh, I have one other thing that needs to be said, and that
Mhm.
is that the Boardroom International Surfboard Show, which is taking place October 10th and 11th, I believe it is, or 11th and 12th of October, long ways from now. But we have announced the 2025 Icon of Foam. And so we are incredibly honored and humbled to be honoring Eric Arakawa as our 2025 Icon of Foam, a legendary shaper who builds the best boards for the best surfers and the best waves in the world there on Oahu and throughout the Hawaiian Islands. So super stoked to have Eric Arakawa as our Icon of Foam.
Phenomenal choice. This is news to me as well. Such a speaking of humble and humility, such a humble, nice dude.
Yeah, and a guy that I'm sure I can learn from because of what you just said, right? There's a ton of like I'm drawn towards that. There's a certain calmness about being in a teachable state of humility that's fascinating. And yeah, we're
He's
excited.
he's also ageless. Like whatever he's doing, we need to be doing. Like we need to sit him down and just be like, "Give me the outline. What does your day look like?" Because he's hardworking.
Yeah.
He doesn't need the limelight at all. He's just quietly going about his work. He's an expert. If I'm not mistaken, I feel like he invented the nose guard. Is that right?
You know what? I need to look into that. That could be the case. I'm not sure about that.
If I'm not mistaken, I think that he did invent that little nose guard diamond tip thing that was big in the 90s.
Hmm.
Don't quote me, but look into
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
but yeah, just the nicest, most humble, great dude. This is who you would, if you had a kid, this is who you would want him to turn into.
Yeah. He's a great human. And, he's made some great boards for some legendary surfers. So, um,
And
pretty,
still is.
pardon me?
And still is.
And still is to this day. Right now, guys are going to be paddling out at the Hui Backdoor Shootout next week, or starting in a couple of days here.
Yeah.
And they'll be riding state of the art surfboards from Eric Arakawa. So we're pretty excited about that.
Epic. Great pick.
Yeah. So anyway, I wanted to crowbar that announcement in because we just found out about that. So we're excited. And where should we start? Do you want me to give you my first?
We'll go back and forth. Yeah, you lead us off and then I'll go with one.
Okay, well, this one's not, none of mine are like, I didn't go outside of the box and come up with some crazy stuff like, space junk is going to fall on the headquarters of the WSL or nothing like that. Nothing too stupid. So most of it's kind of grounded in some sort of reality. And so number one is John Florence is going to beat Gabe Medina at Cloudbreak in the finals of the WSL WCT finals day in solid Cloudbreak. And he's also at that time when he's on the podium going to announce another child on the way for he and his wife, and that he will be retiring.
Wow.
Boom.
That is a bold prediction. And it's a layered prediction too. This is like a storyline that leaves you hanging for a sequel. Um, Interestingly, this was not one I did, like I said, three predictions and then kind of a WSL CT related predictions. And in that segment, I had Gabriel Medina winning the world title. So I'm going to take the opposite. I do like the idea of John making it to the final, so I'll go with you there. But I think it's a Gabriel win in the end.
Well, either way, that would be great. I mean, to see both of those guys in 8 to 10 foot cloud break in the finals would be almost as good as seeing them at Pipeline.
Totally agree. Um, it's a more, yeah, Pipeline is obviously the pinnacle of surfing, but I do like the idea of cloud break because it opens up to different styles of surfing other than just getting barreled. So in a finals day format, you're able to see, turns and other things going on.
And it's weird. I was thinking maybe it leans towards a home field advantage for John, but I think you would agree with me that Gabe is so prolific and he's got tons of uh, time spent in the water at Pipe, but Cloudbreak does have a little bit more of an objective sort of viewpoint.
So I prefer John as a surfer. I would prefer that John won. My prediction is more of Gabriel winning is more based on um, cadence, the way that competition works. John's coming off of a win. We've seen a lot of John surfing. I feel like Gabriel Medina has been underperforming. And so Gabriel, in his competitiveness, in his ego, he needs to come back with a huge year in 2025. And I think that he will. And then once you put him in lefts at somewhere like Cloudbreak, I see him being unstoppable. Like he is a machine, competitively. And so John, I think there is that the judges have already seen a lot of John. So in order for John to really reinvent what he's doing, like I don't know how he could reinvent what he's doing. I think that we will see more of the same and we'll see an improvement on what he's been doing, but it's not fresh enough in the judge's eyes. Whereas Gabriel Medina has this opportunity to really, ratchet it up a notch, I guess.
Yeah. What you're saying makes tons of sense. And frankly, I can't get enough Gabe Medina in 2025, to be honest with you. I agree with you. I feel like he's had this like under the radar year last year, maybe not at his peak.
Didn't even make the top 5.
Yeah, I know. He made a run like he always does. He sort of made a run at the back end of the season, but not quite enough.
But look, finishing in 7th for Gabriel Medina is a major
That's last.
L. Yeah, that's a major L for him. And I think that he's still got all the talent. I think he's still got the drive. I think he has, all the fitness. And so I see him coming in hot.
Yeah, I like it. I think is it your turn?
Yeah, and I will also say, it feels storybook, the prediction that you made, and I would love to see it. And I think John retiring after a third world title would be incredible. Um, Third, right? Or no, that would be his fourth. He has 3. Yeah. So after a 4th world title, that would be incredible. But if he doesn't get the 4th, I don't see him retiring. Like if Gabriel actually wins this 2025, I see that being motivation for John to stay on tour.
Yeah.
Okay, my prediction is a little different. Barbarian Days gets made into a Hollywood feature.
Wow. That's very interesting.
And I
I'm
have
trying to think of the conflict there. What's the conflict? This is more of a wanderlust without much conflict other than a sort of a moral conflict about what to do with one's life. Where do which fork in the road to take? Do I continue on the wanderlust surf thing, or can I become an expert in my field and well respected? And can they both then come back full circle.
They'll figure it out.
Yeah.
There's a lot of films that have been made in a similar vein. Into the Wild, you know, um,
Into the Wild.
right?
I don't, I mean, I don't know about Into the Wild. Into the Wild was that kid that went on a crazy run and ended up in Alaska, right? And
Yeah,
died. Got eaten.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
I
he
don't
ends up
think
dying.
I don't
He
think
ends up,
Barbarian Days, nobody died. Nobody goes. Seems to me the main character in Barbarian Days kind of has his head on his shoulders.
well, yeah, but they're searching, is what I'm saying. Like young guy out on the road searching. That's a
I think a river runs through it is a better, perhaps, film analogy.
Yeah, there you go. Also a successful film.
Yeah.
So I think there's a way to pull this off. This isn't completely out of the blue, though. Like 2 years ago, somebody told me who was at Surf Ranch that they were there doing like kind of pre-production planning for something like this, conceptualizing, and it was like Matthew McConaughey was involved, Edward Norton was there as a producer,
Oh,
or
cool.
maybe even playing Finnegan, I think was the idea. So I had heard nothing since that, but I've always had it in the back of my head, and I think that this could be the year that that
It's
comes.
interesting because you would need a young actor. Like you sense that the first half or more of that book is when he's, 20 years old.
Yeah,
And so an Edward Norton type seem pretty old. But
Edward might play the modern version.
yeah, maybe they just do that thing where they have two different actors.
Yeah, they do a phenomenal job at that now.
Yeah.
There's like a new Dexter, the series Dexter with a serial killer. They have a new version of that film, and it's like the prequel, And
Who was the original guy in Dexter?
Michael C. Hall.
Oh, which show am I thinking about? Where there was a Saturday Night Live guy that went off and did a TV show that was just insanely good. And he
I
was
don't know.
he was an assassin.
Oh yeah. Barry.
Barry, yes, Barry. I want to
That
see
was
a
funny.
Barry prequel. That was such a good show.
That was
Love
funny.
that show, man.
So Barbarian Days, Hollywood film, 2025. But then I'm going to give you a secondary one, which is Lost Hills, the podcast about Mickey Dora from Dana Goodyear. I'm predicting gets optioned and made into a film as well. Maybe not made into a film this year, but that the news comes out that that will be made into a Hollywood film about Mickey Dora.
Wow, that would be
And
cool.
and I have no insider knowledge about that one, but I just
Yeah.
feel like why wouldn't Hollywood option that and try to make a film out of it? And I don't have any faith that they would be successful in doing it, but it's got all the makings
It
of
really
what
does.
Hollywood loves, and the fact that she lives in that area, and everybody, a lot of Hollywood types are
Yeah.
into surfing and they like Malibu and all that kind of stuff. It's like so
And there's
right.
been, as you know, there's been rumors about a Dora biop, uh, biopic. And I think at one point, maybe even Leo DiCaprio was attached to it on some level, but it's all gossipy stuff. Who knows? That would be cool though. And you're right, man. The story has a lot to it, a lot of conflict.
Totally. I don't even know how you would structure the storyline. Like there's so many, there's so
I
much
mean,
lore.
there's major themes in his life that I think you would start with, and then try to attach anecdotes which best sort of excavate those themes.
But there's so much lore and stories of Mickey encounters from people, and they sound fantastical. It's
Yeah.
like it could just be a series of vignettes of crazy Mickey stories.
Do you know who Mike Cruteau is a shaper from, we don't really know where he's from. Anyway, Cruteau is one of these guys too, where like if you mention Cruteau to somebody, they go, "Oh, I've got a Cruteau story." And it's just this crazy story where he just did this crazy ass shit. And, I'm fascinated. In fact, Tony Roberts and I were kind of going back and forth on Instagram about Cruteau. Tony knew Mike pretty well. I think he might have rode for him or something, because Cruteau had a time when he was in Santa Cruz, but I don't know where Cruteau's from. Somebody said, "Oh, he's from Vista." Somebody said, "Oh, he's from Santa Cruz." Somebody said, John Durant said he's from France, or I spoke with John Durant yesterday, and he was the one that told me that nobody really knows where Croteau's originally from. But anyway, I digress. More anecdotal, fun stuff from surfers that really, you know, it's a wicked web we weave here when we hang out in the
Yeah,
surf world.
totally. Awesome. Well, that's my prediction number
Okay.
one.
Number two is kind of a no-brainer one, I think. But Stab is going to engage Kelly Slater either in the electric acid surfboard test or in Stab in the Dark. This year, we will see Kelly Slater teaming up with the good people at Stab for one of those great surfboard content pieces.
Stab would be very lucky to get him. Because I think he is the ultimate. When we just get little snippets of him talking about the boards as we did this year, it's gold. And so we would all love to see that. And I'm sure that offer has been made to Kelly. So it's just a matter of whether or not Kelly chooses to participate and follows through.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing. Like when you look at the Dave Rost, so much of the success of the Dave Rostovich one was because they spent 9 months in production.
Yeah.
And so I have a hard time imagining Kelly committing that level to the process.
Yeah. I don't know. My sense is that he's more or less retired, right? There was never really an announcement other than just kind of what we saw. And so I feel like he's got time on his hands, but I don't know. I don't know Kelly Slater at all. Like who knows? But it's just that one was more of a hope than anything else. And you're right. Maybe he just can't put in the amount of time required for a quality product. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, he's super dedicated and can put in the time clearly into things. I just don't know that that would be the thing that he would put his time into. But we would all benefit from it if he did. And I think that it would actually be almost a perfect fit with his, again, I don't know him either, but with his new lifestyle. He has a new kid. He has a new kid. So that requires you to, let's say, not be on tour. He's all not on tour anyways. And then the 9-month thing with Stab isn't requiring you to be in the same spot for 9 months. There is a little bit of fluidity to it. And so he could, in theory, base at home and then go on these strategic missions to test these specific boards, 12 boards or whatever, for 9 months. It's just being the owner of a surfboard brand, and I know doing everything else that he's doing, it's like committing to 12 boards that aren't shaped by one of your own.
I know, but
assets.
I thought about that. I actually think it's good for his brand.
Yeah.
I think it's good for that, I know on paper you would go, oh, that's a mistake. But I think if you look at the big picture, pull yourself out of it and we have, 4 or 5 episodes of Kelly Slater riding surfboards, and he's discussing surfboards, and he's talking about his boards and how you can see him making the connection. Oh yeah, we do this little bit of double concave in that one that Dan made me, like there's ways that it would be real positive for the brand, for Firewire.
I totally agree with you. I think that his brand could use a shot in the arm as well in terms of marketing and just kind of modernism. Like if you look at the Stabs reader polls and that sort of thing, his brand is not at the top, it's not in the top 5 conversation, I don't believe. And so anything to kind of revitalize and reassert his position as an expert on surfboards, I think is beneficial. And Stab is a phenomenal platform to do that.
Yeah.
So I agree. I would love to see that. Let me ask you, while we're on the conversation of Kelly, what are your predictions for Kelly on the CT next year? I mean, in the wild card events that he gets, how do you predict he will perform?
It all depends on the waves, of course, I think at this point. And so
let's presume he gets invited to Pipe. Let's presume he gets invited to Chopu. And where else? Maybe Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, for sure there, because that's kind of his thing. I don't think he does. I'm the first one that hopes he wins all 3 of them, but I sense something he said that interests all of us. I think, doesn't interest us, but is part of the equation here, is that he just had a kid. And so I sense that he's probably pulling back a little bit from everything. for just for the sake of the mother and the child and the family unit, like don't put that whole thing front and center. And I don't know. I just, if Pipe's really good and 8 to 10 feet, he's in the conversation. Abu Dhabi, he's not in the conversation. And Chopu, it- you know, I, it's hard for me to say I don't think he's going to do well, but I'm not confident that he does well, and I hope I'm wrong.
I don't see him in the conversation really at any of those venues. I think he could win pipe, but I wouldn't bet money on him, and I would put five guys ahead of him basically that I would bet money on, So, and that's all natural and normal and good, and he should be focusing on other priorities in life right now as far as, the way I see it. But all right, cool. My prediction number 2 is that the WSL announces AI judging, artificial intelligent judging.
Oh man, talk about a hornet's nest. Phew.
They can't, hey, at this point, why not? You know what I mean? Like, I think the proof is in, or the evidence is in that
I don't think
judging.
it's that bad. Do you think the judging's that bad? I mean,
Well, I
if you
didn't say
pull your
bad.
okay,
I was
sorry.
going to say subjective.
Okay, well,
The evidence is in that judging is subjective. And as humans, we're all subject to bias. And as surfers, we're all subject to having a favorite surfer. And as soon as your favorite surfer enters the water, how do you divorce yourself from that, and just objectively judge? And so it makes a ton of sense that you could feed AI every, let's say, like tons of video footage, and it would know which surfing won events in the past, which surfing won world titles in the past, and it would be able to create this matrix of data that would then prioritize uh, powerful turns and degree of spins in a rotation and all that sort of thing. And then as soon as somebody gets up and riding, it's operating in real time and assigning a score.
wow. That's fascinating. That's a great prediction. I like the technological side of that prediction. That's something that probably is probably being looked at in other areas that we're not even thinking about. But yeah, so AI and judging, I like it. Let's see what happens. That would definitely be the comments section would get filled quickly.
What would be interesting is if they did like kind of a beta run and it proved to be superior. For the record, this goes against everything that I believe in surfing. But that's also why it's my prediction is I see surfing in the 10 years that we've been doing this podcast, 12 years, uh, diverting down two paths, and it's like, this is the logical extension of that path that this has been going on. When wave pools got introduced and all of the absurdity, as I see it, this is just the next logical extension. Why wouldn't you? If you're running an event at Abu Dhabi and the waves are all the same, why wouldn't you try to use the best technology possible to give the most appropriate scores to differentiate the difference? In fact, you're doing the servers a disservice if you aren't giving them complete objectivity. And so this just is logical to me. And again, it's one step further down the wrong rabbit hole that doesn't really
Yeah.
represent surfing and surfing's kind of an initial thing.
It's
But
interesting because, especially in the wave pool, and you start thinking about guys that are just doing super tweaked out airs that are super style oriented, some of those really like just tweaked out. That's such a style thing, when everyone just goes, oh, that was sick. And I don't know if AI can get that.
thank you. And that's kind of the point that I didn't make was, but where I see that diversion in those two paths is whatever surf contests are trying to measure, they don't account for the essential part of surfing.
Yeah. The dance. Like, because basically what you're saying is we could use AI in the Olympics
Yeah.
for like the floor routine in gymnastics or whatever.
Yeah. You could.
Wow.
But to me, it's missing the essence. And of course, specifically, can you program AI to assign scores for innovation? Because if it's never been seen before and the AI hasn't processed that in the previously seen footage, and then somebody goes out there and does a 720, let's say, does AI know that's better than the 540?
Which really boils down to, if your sport needs AI to determine a winner, you don't have a sport, because sports, the person that's competing in the sport scores his own points. He does so against a competitor that is playing defense against you scoring your own points. And of course, you can't smoke a cigarette while you're doing it, and you can't wear dress pants.
Uh, well, you've made a good argument for surfing not being a sport, but I might argue that if you need AI to do it, that might be the ultimate sport.
Maybe. We will see. Look at us creating tension and confusion amongst the masses. My number 3 and final prediction, again, not going too far out on a limb, Erin Brooks and Caity Simmers, in just about a month, are going to battle it out in the final at the WSL WCT Pipe Pro, the Lexus Pipe Pro event here in February, the number one event on the number one on this year's schedule, the first event on this year's schedule. Erin Brooks and Caity Simmers battling it out, with Caity Simmers barely winning. And this is, of course, going to etch even further into our zeitgeist that we have a real rivalry brewing here between two of the most exciting up and coming, not even up and coming, at the top of their game, female surfers.
I'm going to give you my third prediction right now because it ties in directly and we can discuss them both together. My third prediction is that we will have the first rookie world champ since 2007 this year.
Wow. That's got me thinking. Who was that? Who was the 2007? Steph Gilmore or something?
Stephanie Gilmore was the last one. 18, yeah, I guess 18 years ago. So Erin Brooks,
she might be the youngest. Would she be the youngest as well?
Well,
if she wins in a year, like in September, we need to do some research.
That is a little bit of a can of worms. So Google will tell you that Caitlin Simmers is currently the youngest world champ ever, but Rachel Tilley told me on air that she is the youngest, and she's a longboard champion. So that's the distinction. But if you leave that distinction off and just say who's the youngest surfing world champ ever, Rachel Tilley.
By the way, Rachel Tilley was in Tavarua when I was there. She was on the island when I was there.
Oh, was she?
I didn't really get to meet her or converse with her at all, but she was there and surfing great.
So, yeah, Erin Brooks she's 17 years old right now. Her birthday's in July. So that means she would be a young 18 when she won.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that would make her the youngest shortboard female world champ.
Hold on for just a sec. I'll be right back.
Yeah, sure.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
So you got me thinking.
Okay.
Youngest champion ever in surfing. It could be, and I haven't done any research on this, of course, but it could be that, and I'm just wondering, did some young 15-year-old surfer win the ISA World Championships in, like, I want to say maybe David Eggers was in the open division of the ISA World Championships and won it as a 15-year-old or something, or like Mark Sainsbury or somebody from the 80s that won the ISAs, the open division, the one that all the top guys are in. And you could say they're the youngest world champion ever. So you're right. It is a can of worms, isn't it?
It's a little bit of a can of worms. So the other distinction is Margot Oberg won at 16, but it was a different organization. So if you're just talking like the ASP, which then became the WSL, those were the previous names that we mentioned. But once you open it up,
IPS.
Yeah.
ASP, WSL.
Right. But if you open it up to, ISA and everything else, then maybe you're right. Maybe there might be
Yeah.
other names.
Yeah.
But let's get back to Erin Brooks. So my
Yeah.
claim is that Erin Brooks, in her rookie season, could win a world title. She's already won an event at Snapper. She's won an event at was it Chopu this past year
Yeah.
as a wild card, and then she's
Yeah.
won an event at Pipe. So she's
No,
proven
Cloudbreak. She won at
Cloud
Cloudbreak.
Break. That's what it was. Yeah, yeah. So she's shown versatility in terms of right, left, small wave, big wave, barreling wave, whatever. Like she's got all that dialed in. The question mark is whether or not these young prodigies can translate that onto entire season traveling around. Does reality set in at a certain point and they go, oh my goodness, event 5 against my heroes, like how do you keep that pace? Um, and it's proven to be very, very hard for people to do. And it hasn't been done, like I said, since 2007 with Stephanie Gilmore, who then went on a run. But the big question mark you've already identified, and that is Caitlin Simmers. Caitlin is a force to be reckoned with. And another theme that I've seen kind of developing is surfing is becoming a little too formulaic. It's becoming too predictable and pretty, and especially when you apply the wave pool. And that's where I like Caitlin Simmers, where she's dirty and radical. You don't know the turn that she's going to do. And I think that bodes well for her scoring. And so Erin Brooks is very polished. Erin Brooks has a little bit of Joel Parkinson in her, where she makes everything look easy and she's doing the most difficult thing. And so if Caitlin Simmers can kind of go opposite of that and throw a spanner in the works, throw radical surfing into the heat, I think that suits and benefits Caitlin's scores.
Yeah. Those are great points. And it just makes me think how exciting the women's side of professional surfing is right now, because then you've got, I was looking at a couple days ago, I was looking at the surfers on tour this year. We've got Bella Kenworthy. We've got quite a number of other girls that are probably either could be listening to this or might have a chip on their shoulder, like the Molly Picklums of the world are like, hey, what about me? Like, I won the pipe. Didn't she win pipe, Molly?
Yeah, Molly won a pipe event.
And so, there's other guys. I just think it's an exciting draw, the whole women's side. It wouldn't surprise you at all if, oh, by the way, we haven't even spoke, Carolyn Marks gets pissed off, who's got an insane backhand. Stephanie's still rolling around on the tour.
That's what I was going to say is the ones who need to have a chip on their shoulder right now are Tatiana Weston Webb, Joanne DeFay, Sally Fitzgibbons just requalified. Like that older
Really?
crop. Yeah. That older crop that we've seen year in and year out, they're the ones who need to figure out how to reinvent themselves.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know why, it just seems more fascinating, the women's side of the draw.
Well, I'll tell you why.
Mahini Fierro,
Yeah, I'll tell you exactly why. Is
Tyler. Sorry, go ahead.
certainly because the women have earned it, but then secondarily because when you look at the men who qualified via the CS, it's all names we've already seen before. It's Ian Gouveia, David Silva, Alejo Muniz, Miguel Pupo. It's like bored to death just reading the names, and so we do have a couple of new Joel Vaughn, George Patar, but even when I've seen, I won't say Joel Vaughn necessarily, but when I've seen Joel Patar surf, it's like he looks great. He looks great, but he looks like Morgan Siblick. He looks like a bunch of other people who I've already seen come up and, whereas Caitlin Simmers is fresh, Erin Brooks is fresh. So I don't see the excitement on the men's side. Or I guess where my prediction is Erin Brooks is a rookie. She's going to win a world title. There's no rookie on the men's side that I would say that about.
Yeah. I agree. It's fascinating. It just seems like I'm really only interested in the top 10 on the men's side. And
I guess
the women, you just feel like, I just feel like there's easily 6 women that could win the world title.
Correct. And almost any of them you could see winning a event throughout the course of the season.
Yeah.
And on the men's side, it's like not only do those bottom 20 not win a world title, those guys aren't even going to win an event.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the one caveat that I will say on the men's side that I am curious to see what he does is João Chianca, because Joao's sitting in 14th right now, and he had world title kind of potential. He won a bunch of events at the beginning of the season, or he was in first at the beginning of the season a couple of years ago before his injury. And this is his first year actually back. And I don't know I can't say that he's fully recovered. I don't know that he's not. His surfing has looked really good. But I'd be curious to see if he's able to pick up where he left off.
Yeah, we'll see. I want to throw this at you. At the end of the year, who's going to be higher in the rankings, João Chianca or my guy here in Encinitas, Jake Marshall?
Jake has continued to impress me. I've had kind of low expectations or tempered expectations, and then he proves me wrong over and over. But I'm still going to say João. Who do you got?
Well, look, my heart is pulling in on the side of Jake Marshall, and I'll tell you why, because he grinded forever and on the, the the Challenger. Yeah. And, or whatever one it is that feeds into it. Is it Challenger or QS? I forget. Anyway, he grinded. My point is that, he grinded and grinded and grinded, made it on tour, made the cut, and then surfed really well, obviously, to make the cut. And then last year was super solid. And I just see experience. I see tons of experience with Jake. Like, you know what I mean? It seems like timing is good.
Totally agree. He's, like I said, continued to impress me in a variety of styles of surf and against A-list names.
Yeah.
He's impressive.
Yeah, he is.
Well, I was saying like the Caitlin Simmers kind of radical style approach is what I like. And I see João has that too. João has, I think 2025 could be a backlash against the banal, where you're forced to watch these wave pools, where we're forced into this kind of the structure of the judging and whatever else kind of forces this homogeneity. And so I see a backlash against that. And I think that those things do end up getting rewarded in the end. And so Joao's surfing represents that for me.
Interesting.
Let me run down a couple of names though, while we're on the CT. What's your prediction for Filipe? What do you see there? Do you see him getting back in first place? Do you see him making the top 5?
I don't have anything to base a prediction regarding Filipe on. He's sort of been off my radar. He's such an incredible talent. Let me look at the schedule.
I'll lead us off, and I'm going to say I'm predicting Filipe falling off the podium and maybe not even making the top 5. I think Filipe has a hard time getting back on the horse after taking a year off. Especially if Pipe as the opener of the season is big. I think that rocks his confidence as well. And there's too many other great surfers at this point who can perform out there. And so Filipe ends up going into event 2 in, 20th position or something like that. And I think he has a hard time regaining his status.
See, I look at the first 5 events of the schedule and I say he could win he could win 4 of them. He could lose out at Pipe and he could win Abu Dhabi in the wave pool. He could win in Portugal. He could win at El Salvador, which he has, I believe. He could win at Bells, which he has, I believe. I mean, you know what I mean? Like he could win 4 of the 5. Like if I asked like you would, yeah, you're like shaking your head. Like, yeah, that's actually a possibility. If he's in form, like he was, and I don't understand why he wouldn't be. Filipe could be number 1 at the end of 5 events.
I think the reason why he wouldn't be is his mental space.
Yeah, but I don't have anything to base that on other than if Pipeline shakes him so badly like it did last time that he's done.
Yeah, I think that's where we're at. I think Filipe isn't as steel-minded as a Gabriel Medina is, and he's not as just innately confident as John is. And I think he's proven that with his decisions that he's made and the things that he said. And so I think he does go into this season with a question mark in his own head of whether or not he's on the level of those guys who he watched all year. And so I think they
Yeah.
get in his head. And I think
Okay.
there's enough of those guys, Ethan Ewing, Griffin Colapinto, that are nipping at his heels and they can break through.
Yeah, the schedule breaks down really interesting because he could be in a place where the last event of the year he needs a result in Tahiti, and he's really put to the test, and I hope lives, steps up and makes it good. I'm sure he can.
What is your prediction on world number two, Italo Ferreira?
Full wild card. Um, from what I've seen recently, his surfing in the wave pools is next level. I think Italo, like, how he is. He's like up and like he could win two events and then get last in three events. And then, make a semis, and he'll be in the running and he'll be exciting, and he's somebody to look out for. And you don't want to blink on Italo.
Yeah, I am less in love with Italo than I ever have been. I liked him a lot when he first came onto the scene, and now he just feels really obnoxious to me. He exemplifies everything that I don't like about the modern era of surfing. The Energizer Bunny kind of electric style is not my favorite, but it's undeniable.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, and he would love to hear that I don't like him. And he'd triple down on his next whatever just despite me. And so I get it. And I don't think he's deterred at all. I think he's going to show up and blow up. And yeah, I can see him in second place again, um, doing exactly what he did last year.
I mean, when I look at the list of men, it's hard to go down the list and go, no, he's not going to do good. They all have the ability to do good. The first one that sticks out to me is number 8, Jordy. Like, how is Jordy going to do? And Jordy surprised us, frankly, last year.
Jordy, look, anything less than a world title is less than Jordy wants and had the potential to earn. And so I think I don't know where Jordy goes. If he doesn't win it, I don't know what does for a 13th or 14th year, languishing out of the top five.
Then the next name that dropped that falls, that is a big question mark for me, is Kanoa Igarashi.
Those
He
were the
had
two on my
he had
list that I was going to
Kalohe
ask you.
and Dino, like, this guy's destined to be a world champion. And at this point, he's starting to feel, I think you got to be feeling some pressure.
Long in the tooth.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't see how Kanoa breaks through with the top surfers that we've already discussed or the top five. I don't see Kanoa's point of difference against any of those guys.
Yeah. And then you go down the list and you're kind of like, you're semi yawning. You see some guys that could do a lot of damage, but not in the long haul over the course of a season. And then you get to guys like Joel Vaughn and George Petard and Edgard Grogia and Jackson Bunch, who are just complete wild cards. In 3 months, we could be going, wow, who knew Edgard's got a third, a fifth, and a third, and he's in number one.
Yeah.
Like, who knows? I just don't
I
know. The wild card.
look, he's got to push through the Crosby Colapintos before he ever gets to that level. And then once he gets there, he's got to push through the back five, which is the Ethan Ewings, the Jack Robinsons, and so then you're in a different conversation where you could start talking about Gabriel and John, and that's a long ways away. But really, those top bottom three, the Ethan Ewing, Jack Robinson, those guys are the ones who really need to figure out how to get in that top two conversation because they've been kind of bested by John,
Yeah.
Italo, and and Griffin. This could be a year for Griffin too.
Yeah. No, I mean, we talk about a consistent player.
Yeah. So, well, I'm looking forward to it. We've got about a month left, but the backdoor shootout, as you mentioned earlier, could be running this weekend, and this looks like the
It's going to
forecast is
be
pumping.
huge.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's going to be huge. There'll be days probably when it's too big and it's a Waimea day,
yeah.
but we shall see. And I'm looking forward to that. Do you want to call it for the day or do you want to
Oh,
go?
well, I was just going to ask you, in light of the new year, I said I don't do resolutions, but do you have resolutions or do you have
Yeah.
any goals for 2025?
Um, I do have a resolution, which is to each and every night reflect on the day and where I could have done better. Um, and that's one that my wife and I made together to sort of not just go straight to the book and to the reading light in the evening, but to spend some time reflecting on the day together and where it might have been selfish or in fear and made decisions based in fear and things like that.
That's a great ritual.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Um, my goal for 2025, one of my goals is to streamline and organize everything. I feel like as life gets busier for me, I'm just doing all the things all the time, but I don't actually enjoy all of the joy that I have in my life. Like I have incredible things in my life, you know? I don't need to list them, but a
Yeah.
lot of really, really, really things that would bring anybody else joy and not just one individual of them. I have a bunch of them from family to work to whatever else. And so I don't enjoy them as much as I should because I have too much frenetic, busy energy just trying to accomplish all the tasks. And so I want to streamline the work life a little bit more, the podcast production life a little bit more so that I can actually enjoy the things that I do have.
Yeah. I, I, if you asked me, I would say this is what you should do, David. You should streamline your situation. And I think it would, because I know you're busy as all get out. And
Yeah,
so it's got to be a lot,
yeah,
and there is a lot of back end stuff that's just tedious.
totally.
Yeah.
Um, my other kind of thought in the new year is that your phone is poison.
Dude, I'm so glad you said this. I'll give you a little tip, not
Please.
a tip, but I'll tell you what I'm starting days without the phone. I had my first day last week and it was pretty awesome. And so yeah, continue. I
Is it
didn't
as
mean to
simple as
interrupt your thing, but it's as simple as you put it away. You tell your loved ones, I'm off the phone today. Write me a note. Like if I'm going to need to contact somebody, there's going to be 15 people with phones next to me in case of an emergency.
it's a good point.
Yeah,
You know what's weird? I wrote this down yesterday about like, man, the phone is poison. And then
it is.
and part of that was related to surfing yesterday where I thought part of the reason surfing is so great is because your phone is nowhere near. Like you couldn't be further away from your phone in that moment, you know?
Yeah.
God forbid you have an Apple Watch. Like throw that thing in the
Ooh,
trash too.
yeah.
Um, so that epiphany was like, oh man, all right, well, the phone, once I'm on land, I also don't need to be tethered to the phone. The phone is poison. So last night I had that yesterday, and then last night I had a dream that I dropped my phone and it broke, and I was without access to it for a day, basically. And in the dream, I never made it back to the store to actually get a new one, but the dream started with anxiety. So just like, oh no, nobody can get a hold of me. What am I going to do if I need to get a hold of somebody? And then the anxiety gave way to acceptance. It was just like, well, there's nothing I can do. So I'm just going to like let it go. And then the rest of the dream was like, this is a new way of life. This is like a vast improvement in all things. And so
So my challenge to you is if you spend one day without your phone, what day is that going to be? What's the day that makes sense for you to not have your phone?
Sunday, probably.
Yeah, that's the day. Sunday's the day. That's the day that I did without. And it was, you know, Monday through Friday, we're busy. Like I need my phone. I got calendars, and the bigger issue really is the social media scrolling that is attached to that phone for me, right? The Instagram and even my news feed, like I'll just spend so much time just going through news, you know? And
I
so anyway,
agree. I agree. That's the biggest waste of time or the biggest issue with the phone, but I don't want to um, just cut out social
no,
media
cut it all
because
away.
I would then use that time to waste on a different app, you know?
Exactly.
So I think get rid of the whole thing.
Sundays, phone
So
free Sundays.
my final goal or my third goal in this conversation is to improve my memory. I
Wow.
want to take active steps because that's something where I realize, especially when I'm interviewing people or like Bob, talking to Bob McTavish at the Boardroom show, you know, and he's reciting street names from when he went and saw Rennie Yater 50 years ago. You know, oh, and then I made a left on this street in Santa Barbara. And I'm like, how do you know that? And board dimensions from that long ago and stuff like that. When I struggle to remember what you and I discussed last week on the podcast, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's just a muscle that you exercise, and
Yeah.
there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to just improve it.
And how do you do that?
There's got to be an app for it on my phone.
Actually, there is an app for meditation, which I think would be helpful with both of our memories is spending time in meditation, which I do.
Yeah.
But there are other things too, like crossword puzzles. I think puzzles are supposed to be really good.
Yeah. And I think this ties into the busyness that I talked about earlier. If I can streamline things and be less busy, I think that the brain absorbs more of the information that it's receiving, you know?
Yes, I like it.
Dude.
These are
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
These are
Thanks.
great. These are good stuff. All right. Well, look, we've got resolutions. It's early. Let's do our best to stick with them. Until next time, David, adios and aloha.
Right. I guess we forgot must see moment. And
Oh,
let me do like a Surfrider that I'll
yeah,
put in as a commercial at the commercial break.
sure.
Okay. Scott, I want to give listeners a quick reminder about the Surfrider Foundation. And look, we know they do beach cleanups and stuff like that, but I don't know if people are fully aware of all of the legislative work that they are doing on a large scale. And in 2024, they filed a landmark lawsuit against Exxon, the oil giant. And this lawsuit is specifically about their misinformation about the recyclability of single use plastics. Exxon is the world's largest single use plastics manufacturer. And basically there's no way for us to recycle our way out of the plastic pollution problem. You need to stop the problem at its source. And so as there's been movements and initiatives to stop the problem at its source, Exxon allegedly started publishing misinformation about we can recycle our way out of the problem. Recycling is the solution. And so Surfrider partnered with some other organizations and filed this lawsuit. They're doing big work like that. And the reality is now they're in for the fight and they're fighting against, of course, Exxon's moneyed up attorneys. And it's going to be a long battle. And so that is where Surfrider also needs your help. It's not just in the beach cleanups, but it's in your support helps fund their team to go to battle on bigger issues like this.
Wow. Yeah. So that's a big one. I'm reading a little bit about it. Their complaint is that Exxon covered up the truth. I know you just mentioned this, but I'm just reading straight from the deal here. Exxon covered up the truth about the dangers of single-use plastics it produces, and that Exxon knowingly caused the public to believe that single-use plastics can be safely disposed of, despite knowing otherwise,
Yeah.
thereby directly contributing to the plastic pollution crisis. So, yeah, that's a quick summary of what you just said. I think you just said it probably verbatim, just like that, but I went onto their
Well,
site and found this.
but look, Surfrider is layered and they've got people at Capitol Hill, they've got people at your local beach. And so they could use your support. And so if you could just become a member, you could set the amount, $5 a month, $25 a month, whatever it is, just become a member and help fund that work. And then also it'll keep you informed. They'll send you newsletters and things like that. It'll keep you informed into what's going on if you do want to actually activate physically and go out and help in any certain way. So surfrider.org is where you go. 40 years of ocean protection, which by the way is protection for humanity. We cannot live without the ocean. And so just get involved, support them for another 40 years at surfrider.org.
Amen, brother.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, bud. Talk to you later.
See you next week.